Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lash Sisters Uncensored, which is our podcast with everything related to lash artists and helping lash artists grow and helping you guys out with information and with support to grow your lash business. So, today I am very excited. I have a very special guest. Her name is Patrice Jenson. And um, She's a very special friend of mine, and we're going to be talking with her about how you can grow your lash business and certain things that you need to know on how to improve your business with different strategies, business strategies that she's going to tell us about. Hi, Patrice. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Thank you
Good,
for
good.
having me on here.
Of course, of course. I'm super excited to have you on. I think you could provide a lot of value to beauty professionals because a lot of times, you don't know what you don't necessarily know, right? Sometimes
Right.
you
Don't
might
know
not
what you don't know.
you
Yeah.
don't know exactly. And in beauty school, you and I, we both met in actual beauty school. So,
Yeah.
you know that they don't teach this type of thing, right? Like when you're
No,
going through being an esthetician and a lash artist, they're not going to
it's
teach
just
you
all about testing.
exactly. It's all
Mhm.
about testing and a lot of other things. So, this is the type of stuff that you kind of just need to either figure out or consult someone that is a professional in this, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
And so tell me a little bit about your background and McZeal Brands that you founded and how that relates to lash artists.
So McZeal Brands, which our website is www.mczeal, MCZEAL brands with the S.com, came after I exited the corporate America world. So my background primarily of my adulthood is in telecommunication and consumer goods industry with backgrounds in sales and marketing and management contracts and things like that. And throughout those years, I was able to see not only how the large brands that I was working for ran about their business, but also the customers also, which were local and regional names, how they looked at their business too, how they went to market with their new brands and things like that. So even though you have a extremely big brand that's like a household name, they still have like new products they're launching, and they still have that startup mentality too when it comes to things they may be putting out there that are new to the public. So after I exited the corporate America world, I basically pursued my love for beauty. And prior to that, I was very much into skincare. I was Sephora Rouge, buying makeup, skincare. And we met when I'm like, okay, I love skincare. I love beauty. Let me get licensed. And aesthetics is where I went. That's where we met, which I'm really grateful for our friendship and partnership too. Um, so yeah, after that, after school and we graduated and got our licenses, I did open a salon suite in North Carolina while managing my health and wellness business, Fresh Breath Always. But McZeal Brands is primarily professional services. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that helps with starting a business, the non-negotiable things you need. We have hourly consulting, so we can basically steer you in the right direction, especially if you're starting. There's some things that you may think you need that you don't. That would be a waste in time of your money, especially when you're starting off. So we provide those services also. And then I'll touch later on everything in specific, especially regarding one of our topics, which is FDA registration for those who are in the lash or beauty industry who have private label products that they have on the market right now or they're looking to put on the market, what that looks like moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Very interesting. Tell me a little bit, like you said, some things that a lash artist or an esthetician that thinks that they need, but they don't actually need it. Can you give me an example of something that like that? Like
Yeah. So, for example, when you're starting off and you're serious about your business and you want to grow your reputation, you want to grow your credit, you want to establish a name for yourself, one of the basic things you need, which I deem is the social security number of your business, is your EIN number.
Mm-hmm.
So we help with getting EINs, making sure you have the right licensing based on your state. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, depending on the field you're in, licensing and things like that. It may be specific counties may have their set of rules for certain industries. So the
And it's
clients,
always changing, right? It's
right, it's
constantly
always
changing.
changing. You have to stay update, making sure you have licensing based on your state and you're in compliance with your city or your county based on the field you're in. Insurance is a non-negotiable, especially for lash artists. So, um, as a licensed esthetician, my specialty wasn't lashing, but I did a lot of facials and
And lash
coming
lifts.
off. Yeah, and that is, even though it may not be the eye, it's the skin. And you have to make sure that you're insured. I know, for example, the place that I was leasing in North Carolina, I couldn't rent or lease my spot there, my space there, unless I had insurance. That was per the business owner because he was protecting his building, but you also have to protect your space, your equipment, your license. You have to protect your practice because that's how you make your living. So insurance is one of those non-negotiables. And insurance for estheticians is very, very affordable depending on the area you're in. So we do
Mhm.
offer consulting services for that based on our client's specific area of business and practice, their geography will assist with helping them form a plan on those non-negotiable items they need to start.
Exactly. And when someone graduates from beauty school, they don't necessarily know where to even start looking for these things.
Right.
Uh,
And then you have social media too. And social media can be confusing. You have people saying, "Oh, go get a car and a credit card and your business name," and it doesn't work like that. So
exactly.
having
There's a
that
lot of
knowledge.
confusing information out there from people that like, may have done it, but they may have done it not the right way, or they have done it in the wrong way. You know what I mean?
Right. And I look at it like this. When your child, if you have children, I don't, but I have nieces and nephews. When they graduate from high school, you don't necessarily say, go get some credit cards. You
Right.
definitely that wouldn't be wise. You would have to gradually show them how to manage their money, their checkbook, show them what to do with when you do advise them to start getting maybe one credit card, how to keep that balance under 30%, how to not spend what you don't have or that's not coming in and accumulating debt. So the way you want to practice good judgment with your personal finances translate into your business also.
Exactly. And that's the type of services you provide, that the coaching that you provide for
Right.
specifically for beauty professionals.
Yes, and we have student pricing for those students. If they're able to show that they're about to graduate and they're actively enrolled, we have on our website student pricing, and then we have the pricing for professionals. And in that business formation package, they receive EIN creation, business registry. We give recommendations on taxes and insurance steps that they should take based on their industry and their market. We help them create a go-to-market strategy plan and more things inside that are listed on our um, our account. And one of those things is also retail. So, which is what we're touching on now, especially if you have the lash artists who want to do their private label. Maybe they want to, or they're currently offering shampoos to their clients to make sure they have good maintenance with their lashes and stuff like that. What's needed.
Right, right. So that's awesome. That's very, very, very interesting. And tell me, what are some basics when setting up a business for those in the beauty industry? Is that what you just touched on?
Yeah, that's what I just touched on. You want to be licensed, and I know we've come across some people who are practicing who aren't licensed, but I would just stress if you are actively like making money in this beauty industry, put that money and invest that into your education. And then those who are licensed, who are practicing, you want to invest into continued education. And I know Thousand Lashes is really good at helping with continued education. They're good with helping with specialty lash styles and things like that. And with the basics and the advanced. And Galena, I think you guys are working on a university, right? Just to help uh, the lash artists with their education. Is that correct?
So university, we have a lot of courses. So we do a lot of like in-person courses, and we do a lot of online courses.
Yeah.
And again, it's just because there's such a lack of information, such a lack of support and knowledge in the beauty industry, especially for lash artists, because it's a new field, right? Like it's a new industry. It's just been around for, like in the US, maybe tops 8, 10 years, where it's just started to develop. And so yeah, there's still quite a lot of information and knowledge that is missing, and this is the one of the biggest gaps of knowledge
Mhm.
that I see is really in business. And that's why I thought, you know what, this would be really an awesome thing to have you on, to just give some value to lash artists that might be struggling with this, but they don't even know that they're struggling with this because nobody told them that this is something they need to know, and this is something they need to take care of, right?
Yeah, and just to touch back on that last question you had about like the basics, one of the basics is staying organized with your spending and your expenses because as you start your EIN, you're probably going to put yourself as a LLC or sole proprietorship, whatever you deem fit. But once you do that, once you start doing taxes that following year, you have to report on what's called a Schedule C, your business's profit and loss and expenses, and if you made a profit or not for that tax year or tax season. So just staying organized is also the support we'll give when if someone books us for business formation services.
Okay, so staying organized and like figuring out, what should they get, an LLC,
Yeah,
should
it
they get.
helps you so much at the end of the year or when it's time for taxes instead of having to like always look up receipts. There's even applications now that you can use if you're out and you're buying lash products or if you're or skin products or if you're on thousandlashes.com and you're purchasing, making sure that that business card or the amount you're spending is automatically recorded in a system so that when it's time to do your taxes, it'll be easier to do
Yes,
so. Yeah.
exactly. And the mistake that I actually made initially when we were just starting out, like 8 years ago, I would purchase things with my personal card,
Mhm.
and not knowing that I actually needed to have two cards. Like I didn't know I had to have a business card and a personal card. So I'd put everything on my personal card, and then at the end of the year, when the accountant was like, "Okay, well, what's personal and what's business," and like a year has passed, so I don't even
Yeah.
know what was personal and what was business at that point. So that's a really really good point. And a lot of once again, like I didn't know this, a lot of like people that are just starting out, estheticians, lash artists, they don't know that they have to have two different cards, right?
Right. Right.
So tell me a little bit about like lash suppliers and the MOCRA. Like what is the MOCRA? Because you helped us out a lot with the MOCRA, which is like the new requirement. Tell me a little bit about that.
So MOCRA stands for the Modernization of Cosmetics Regulation Act in this of 2022. And the most recent and significant expansion of it is to regulate cosmetics. So this new law helps to ensure the safety of cosmetic products that many consumers use daily. It includes, but it isn't limited to ensuring customers and companies report adverse effects from the use of cosmetics, for example, lash glues, shampoos and things of that nature. And it requires facilities, so distributors, manufacturers, and suppliers. It requires them to now be registered and that responsible parties are named from each business. For example, if you are a lash artist and you have your own private label shampoos for your clients, and anything considered a cosmetic that they would use routinely, you'd be deemed a distributor of that cosmetic. So your business would need to be registered with the FDA. So your product information would need to be entered. And one of those things is like the category that the FDA puts that product in, the ingredients, the foreign facility. So say your supplier of your private label product is in China or Turkey or whatever it is. That foreign facility must be registered with the FDA also. And the FDA would provide them with what we call a FEI number, which I'll touch on later. But and that's where you get to register your product inside the FDA Cosmetics Direct website. That it's a tedious task, and we offer that service. Also, that's how we, connected with Thousand Lashes and help get them compliant with the new requirements from MOCRA. And you either get approved or denied. If you get denied, it shows why, and you could get denied for different reasons. But it's just good to know the system, know what the FDA wants based on MOCRA. And once you're approved for each product, each of those individual products will get what's called a listing number, which means the FDA went over everything it required you to put in, ingredients, the facility number where you actually source your product and things like that. They approved it, and so you get a stamp of approval, which is a specific number for each product.
Yeah, and that's a very like if you don't know what you're doing, like myself, for example, if I had to do that on my own, it would have been a really, really difficult task for me to complete just because it's very like you have to understand what you're doing, right?
Yeah,
And
it's very time consuming, which is why we offer it. So owners like you, lash artists who may have their own products, that you
they
guys can
sell.
focus on your business, your clients, your customer, growing your business as opposed to spending hours and months doing this. It takes from your plan and growing your plan for the year.
Exactly, exactly. I would not recommend doing this yourself on top of it because if you're, because it's going to take a long time, but also if you don't really know exactly what you're doing, like it can be a little bit like you can mess it up, right?
Yeah, you can mess up. It's good that, one thing about that number that your suppliers, especially if they're out of the country, have to, be registered, where you source your bulk product. One thing about that is we don't know if the number they give you is correct until we submit it you
Mm-hmm.
know. And then I'll touch on being organized in that way before hiring us. What are some things you can get in line to make the time go by, to help us streamline processing your FDA compliance with your products and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then it's interesting that you touch on, I didn't even think of that, the fact that lash artists that actually sell their own private label shampoo now also have to be registered with the FDA.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people do that. A lot of lash artists do that. And so
Yeah.
that's something that they need to be aware of, right? Because this is
Yeah.
a new requirement. When did it come into effect?
They were updating everything 2024, but as of now, if you are not if your products aren't registered, you're basically late. You're behind because mid-January of 2025, I don't have the specific date, was when it went into effect, when everyone had to have their products in their facilities registered. So if you don't have it, it's just good to hurry up and get compliant. And
Or
then
you're
I'll,
going to get in trouble.
I mean, yeah, you could just be liable. Another thing is it's for the protection of the public. And most people you've been dealing with your same suppliers, you know, and trust things, but those suppliers also sell to other companies. So what the FDA wants is say one product becomes compromised, that foreign entity number will be flagged, and then the FDA is able to see all the other brands or companies, wherever they are, that are attached to that specific product and maybe issue a warning, sort of like a food recall, you know?
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really helpful. And it's actually helpful for you also as a brand owner because then, if the FDA can give you a heads up that the product has become compromised, that's very helpful, right?
Oh, definitely helpful with protecting your company and your brand. Yeah.
And the
And the
consumer.
customer for first and foremost.
Yeah,
Especially in the lash industry because you're dealing with
people's
customers'
eyes.
eyes. And that
Yeah.
leads into our next topic, which was the small business exemption.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
Tell
sure
me
if
about that. How does
so
it affect lash distributors?
yes, so MOCRA exempts certain small businesses from registration. Like you could just go through and not have to jump through all the hoops. However, such exemptions don't apply to manufacturers or facilities or anyone with the following cosmetic products. So your suppliers and you distributing, if you have products that regularly come into contact with the mucous membrane, excuse me, of the eye under customary or usual conditions of use, you can't qualify. And there are other industries like products that are injected. Maybe people have Botox or whatever it is, injectables of different, kinds, and anything intended for internal uses on there. But for our industry and for these topics specifically, the number one listed is anything that comes into contact with the mucous membrane of the eye. So everything we
Mhm.
use as far as the balms, the shampoos, the treatments, the primers, everything, the glues, all of those items come into contact with the mucous membrane of the eye. So therefore, people in the lash industries, whether it's the suppliers, distributors, manufacturers, have to register and have to register the products with the F.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the what we've come to notice as well is when communicating with the suppliers, if you're sourcing and if you're trying to find like a glue that you want to sell, you have to make sure that obviously they are FDA compliant and approved, right?
Yes, and as you hired us on to take this on for you, we can speak to like you having to step in and say, hey, if you don't provide me with this number, I need to protect my business and be compliant with our federal regulations in the United States. I'm going to cut ties with your business. And, you may have to go there because you need your FDA compliance, and you
Mm-hmm.
were able to successfully help us when things like that arose with only one of your particular suppliers, but it was helpful to let them know that, hey, we need your FEI number. If you're not registered, we'll give you time. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the times it's such a new requirement that a lot of the suppliers simply don't know about it. And so once
Right.
they're educated and they are walked through the process of how to do it, then they actually do comply. But a lot of times when they don't necessarily know what to do, it's a little bit hard if you don't know and they don't know, like no
Correct.
one knows, right? So
Right.
it's
And
like,
and now that the FDA is like putting this into effect, they're, hopefully more of them are becoming more aware. I know your suppliers are now more aware. Some of them knew and some of them didn't know, and we had to tell them, here, this is where you go. You need to
yes,
register and give us that number.
yes.
But as the US companies have to become more compliant and become compliant with the FDA, it'll be more helpful down the road.
For sure, for sure. And also ultimately, you want obviously some kind of accountability, right, from the
Yes.
products that companies are
Yeah.
selling. So ultimately, this is really a good thing. It's a good
Yeah.
thing for the lash artists. It's a good thing for the clients that are getting lash extensions.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
And for the brand, because now when I use Thousand Lashes products and I know they're registered with the FDA and they have a product number for this particular item I'm using, it just makes me more at peace that you are, compliant with the regulations, which is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Tell me, what does it take? Did you to become compliant with the FDA based on the MOCRA Act?
Okay, so it's really four pillars. You need to register, and we provide all these services with what we call our FDA MOCRA compliance package. So you'll get all of these inside that on our website. So we help you register, which is one of the requirements with the FDA online. We help you list your products, and that is probably the most tedious and time-consuming task because the FDA requires specifics on the ingredients. And it's really the ingredient list because when you get to some of these shampoos mainly and treatments and serums, the list can get long, and then there's a way to put it in using unique identifiers, unique identifier numbers that the FDA needs for each ingredient. And we touched on getting denied for the product, even though, you can resubmit. And one of those times we did get denied before with the client was because of the ingredients. So the FDA said, no, we don't want you to use this unique identifier code. You need to use the correct one. Well, they didn't give me the correct one, but we had to look up and see specifically what they want. And I'll touch on that next with like how to get ready to receive these services. But product listing is another one where we do all the footwork and put the products in groups is like what we like to do it. We like to do it by glues, by shampoos, just so it's all organized in your profile on the FDA's website. And
Mm-hmm.
then the FDA will issue those product listing numbers. We make sure you have those records on hand. And then labeling is another thing. So your items are now considered cosmetics, especially the lash industry now. Everything we named, not excluding any other thing I may have not mentioned, but for example, the glues, the treatments, the serums, those items, the shampoos, the label has to come into compliance with cosmetic labeling, FDA cosmetic labeling. So we do that. And then the last thing would be adverse effect reporting compliance, which ties into labeling also. So on the client's website, they need what's called a HIPAA approved form to make sure if a client uses a product or let's say, for example, a esthetician uses your product on someone else or the client uses directly on themselves and something happens, you get to basically allow for the client to report it to you. They are allowed to report it directly to the FDA, but the FDA gives you the ability to be the first line of defense for the public, especially in particular to someone who had an adverse effect and may have used your product alone or with other items. They are able to report that on your website. And it ties into labeling because you need to make sure that they have a number or a QR code or a URL on your product labeling to reach out to you in order to report. So those are like the four pillars: registration, product listing, labeling, and adverse effect reporting for MOCRA.
Yeah. So it definitely sounds like, like when the lash art industry was just beginning, it was just like you slap on a white label and you sell it. Now things got a lot more complicated with the FDA because now you have to do all of these steps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it. That's kind of what I thought. And how can, let's say a company is preparing to work with you. What would be like some of the things they can do to prepare to work with you? Let's say if they sell their own lash products, right? Or they sell shampoos for their clients for retail.
So the basics and the most important things would be to collect all SDS forms for your items,
Mm-hmm.
because that is what we use from your suppliers to put in your product ingredients and to accurately put those items and those products in the right categories that the FDA gives us. We will also need their FEI numbers from the suppliers. And if they don't understand what that is, like you mentioned, Galena, earlier, some of the suppliers just don't know. Maybe they don't work with enough big brands or brands that are becoming compliant. Then we basically walk them through how to do it. We don't hold their hands, but we give them the information and the tools they need to get their FEI number because you need that in order to even submit your products. Clarity on ingredients. We should have clarity on the ingredients from the SDS form. So I'll give an example. For our client we're working with now, there some collagens are listed on their SDS sheets, or it may just be collagen only. But with collagen, there's marine collagen from the sea, or from sea products and sea creatures or whatever it may be. But there's also bovine or bovine.
Octopus.
Yeah, so there's also cattle derived collagen. So we need the specifics. If you're going down your SDS list and it says, for example, collagen, what we would like for you to do is ask your supplier, what type of collagen is this? Um, and then, the FDA uses unique ingredient identifier codes. We go by UNI codes. It's UNII for short codes for each ingredient, and those have to be correct inside each product listing before you can submit it also. And the last thing I would say before, hiring us on, if you want it to be organized and you don't want to go over the time or extend the time of hiring us and just make it streamlined and seamless, is to have a liaison ready to communicate with us. And Thousand Lashes did a great job with that when we worked with them. We had Flora, who works for, your company. She was always readily available to communicate to suppliers on our behalf, get clarifications, and provide FEI numbers from the one or two suppliers who we gave extra time to provide those numbers. So having at least two people in your company ready to help us get information or additional information we need would also help with organization before hiring us.
Yeah, and there's a lot of back and forth, right? Because like
Yeah, definitely.
you submit, it works, or you submit to the FDA, it doesn't work, and so like you
Right.
have to go back and forth, fix certain things. And so if you have to be on point with the communication, because obviously if you're not on point, it's gonna extend, it's gonna take forever, right? It could take
Definitely.
months.
Mhm.
So that's a really good point. Now, I'm sure a lot of lash artists or estheticians are thinking like, okay, well, what if I'm not ready yet to sell my own lash brand, or I'm not ready yet to sell shampoos, but or distribute them, but I still kind of want to like have some business knowledge and protect myself and protect my business. What are some practices and steps that you would take to protect your license and your company? I know you touched on some of them initially, but like what other advice can you give specifically lash artists that are really just starting out and they don't really know what they don't know, and they're just kind of like lost, and they're like, oh my god, what do I need to do?
Yes. So as a lash, I'm sorry, not lash. I didn't specialize in lashes, but after, as a licensed esthetician myself, I took the time to create a very detailed consent forms for my waxing clients, for my facial clients. If I were a lash artist today, I would not touch anyone unless they have a signed consent form that you can keep file of physically or electronically. And also have clients read and agree to arbitration if that's a route you want to go. And arbitration basically means you're using a third party to settle a dispute versus a client directly taking legal action against you. So I would at least have those two forms in addition to insurance. You always want your insurance. That's something we touched on earlier. Insurance is can be very affordable. You can even call those who, your agent who handles your house or your renter's insurance or your car insurance, and they have the ability to do it. I have been with State Farm for years, so they were able to get me licenses for my business, and they were very, very affordable. But definitely, those things in addition to insurance, have your consent forms and take your time. And then if you want, maybe look into arbitration agreements, meaning everyone reacts to things different. I can use a facial cleanser and be fine, and it wouldn't have any harsh fragrances or anything in it. But someone else can use it and break out in hives, and it's the same for anything. Everyone's body reacts different to anything. And you also have people react different to situations also. So consent forms, maybe look into arbitration agreements, and then keep your licensing documents active at all times. I know in California, is it about 2 years we have our license? I just renewed mine, but I believe it's
Mm-hmm.
2 years. So keep your licensing active at all times. There should be no time that lapses between your previous license and your new license where you were practicing. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want your license to expire and you still keep your books full during that time you don't have it active or renewed. Keep it renewed before it even expires because that will help you legally also. And those are just a few tips that I have for protecting yourself in your profession.
Awesome, awesome. I think you really like gave us a lot of value and a lot of really, really interesting topics to think about for a lot of like the lash artists that are listening. I am going to put your website in the footnotes so that they can contact you directly, and also if there's anything else that you may want to share, before we hop off,
Oh,
let me
definitely.
know.
I want to say thank you for having me on.
Mm-hmm.
On our website, you do have to put the www before the .mczealbrands.com. We
Uh-huh.
offer hourly consulting. We do
Mm-hmm.
have the FDA MOCRA complete package as a service. We have
Mm-hmm.
labeling. If you just want to get your product labels together at this time, we do have that. So you can just bring your products, your cosmetic products into compliance with the FDA standards. We have
But
the
also, can I just interrupt you one
Mhm.
before I forget? Patrice
Yeah,
is amazing with ingredients. So she's like an ingredient like nerd. She loves ingredients.
I
And
do.
so if you want to like put together, let's say a shampoo or something that has like the best ingredients, and you want to kind of customize it and consult her on the type of ingredients that you want to use in your products, she is also very good at that. I
I
don't think.
do love formation. You're so right.
Yeah,
Product
that's
formation
something
is
you
so
love.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah, it's very good. That's not on the website, but feel free to I'll put that on there. Um yeah, I do have a love. Galena knows because we were in school together. I just love
She's all about the
ingredients.
ingredients. She's
Yeah.
like, she goes into a deep dive on like every ingredient. I love that.
Oh, definitely love it. But business formation services, we touched on that. And then what we do offer that is on our website currently is aesthetics and cosmetology study support.
Okay.
So I personally take part in the aesthetic study support for students, and then I have someone who has been in the cosmetic and cosmetology industry over 15 years, who teaches and well, she teaches, but she also studies with the cosmetology students who may book us for that support also with help with passing their tests.
So basically a support, like a support group where you teach them exactly how to pass the
Right. We
test.
go over what's on there. Galena, you took the test, so safety and sanitation is big and things like that. Yeah,
Okay, that's awesome. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people that are studying for their exam right now are like that need and are worried if they're gonna pass or if they're stressed out, if like there's certain topics that are not clear for them. You offer that service as well.
definitely.
Awesome, awesome. So perfect. So I will put the website in the notes, and then if you guys want to have Patrice on again on the podcast to talk about something else, something more specifically like that we spoke about that we touched on today, definitely email us, or you can just put it in the comments here on the podcast, or just message us on Instagram, and then we can have Patrice back on with whatever topic you guys are interested in hearing more about. But definitely, if you are struggling with anything business related about lashing, licensing, if you want to make your own brand and you're confused about the ingredients or the FDA requirements, Patrice is a great resource to consult with and see if you can work with her. Awesome.
Well,
So
thank you
Patrice,
so much.
thank you so much. So
Appreciate it.
all right, we'll talk soon.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye.